Right, thanks, Joe. So I really just have a couple of things I want to talk about today. One is some lessons that we got from some kochia weed control trials this year, as well as kind of some wrap-up information from a dry bean herbicide by a cover crop trial. So I guess I just wanted to start by sharing a little bit of a lesson with you all. So back in 2009, I was at CSU working with a group there that was investigating some of the very first instances of glyphosate resistance in kochia. And it was really interesting at that point in time because if you would drive through Kansas at that point, you'd see all these wind trails here of kochia moving everywhere. When I started here at NDSU in 2012, that's when some of the very first instances of glyphosate-resistant kochia popped up in this area as well. And we saw a little bit of the same thing. Now, one of the big lessons in all this is that we now have group 14 resistance. And what I'm kind of noticing in our area is that you can still see some of these patterns out in the field, but it's not as evident. When you saw this out in your field with glyphosate resistance, ALS, some of the other chemistries, you knew exactly the problem you had to deal with the next year after that. We had a problem sneak up on us in Carrington where the resistance was just there. There was no forewarning. The group 14 resistance that we have, and where we're doing some of the trials on that I'm presenting, it was just there, and it was all the plants. So it didn't seem like there was segregation. All the plants were just resistant. So I just wanted to share that a little bit, and because what was going through my mind was a lot of the same things that go through a lot of people's mind. When you see that first failure of control, you start to assume other things like the product wasn't working right, maybe it was mixed wrong, something along those lines. But following confirmation through genotyping, as well as continued testing in some greenhouse studies, it was confirmed that it was in fact resistance. So even working with resistance for a lot of years, it kind of still came up under my nose without even being aware of it until it was essentially too late. So I wanted to go over what some of this looks like. So we have a multi-site study in North Dakota at a lot of the different research centers looking at different rates of metribuzin and sulfentrazone. And again, this study at Carrington was conducted on a population that would be resistant to sulfentrazone. Again, not necessarily knowing it at the time. So this, I guess really the biggest takeaway from all this here is we had looking at, looking at 4 and 8 ounces here of sulfentrazone, getting really poor control on our kochia populations. Now, 8 ounces of sulfentrazone is certainly not anything that I believe anybody's going to be using commercially. But to only get up to 70% control with 8 ounces of sulfentrazone is certainly alarming. And at normal use rates, only 40% control. That's for the price of that product and what you'd be expecting out of it is, again, extremely alarming. However, when we add that metribuzin, we get substantial benefits almost at any rate of the metribuzin that we're using in this study. So again, almost instantly, even with a quarter pound, adding a tremendous amount of control to our system. And in fact, going down here to something like 4 ounces of Spartan and either of the rates of metribuzin, getting very nice levels of control. So again, it's extremely concerning, but here's the other thing. We actually have 2 years worth of data. So that was from 2025. This is that same study conducted in 2024. The results are even more staggering in that year. In fact, if you look at about a month after the application, almost zero control of the sulfentrazone that year, and I get more of a reflection of the growing season differences between the 2 years. But again, the story is still the same when we have the metribuzin added to it. Still very good levels of weed control. The sulfentrazone on its own looking to be quite problematic. And again, just to give you a visual on what that looks like. So at the top pictures here, we have the low rate of metribuzin and what that does. And on the bottom, the high rates of metribuzin. On the left, we have low rates of sulfentrazone, and on the right, high rates of sulfentrazone. And so, again, there's other weed species in here too. You'll see when we increase like the sulfentrazone, we're picking up more of the grasses and the lamb's quarters. But definitely, kochia is notably absent when we're using the high rate of metribuzin. So very clear, both of the numbers and visually in the plots. Now this is quite late in the season, and some of the kochia there looks a little bit more exaggerated because it is has got a lot of opportunity to grow. So fewer survivors over here, but they're much larger. Okay, moving on to a little bit different study. We've been doing a little bit of work the last couple of years looking at taint mixing with Liberty and Enlist. And so this study here was looking a lot at how we can best utilize that system to work cohesively. Enlist 1 is not a kochia product, and I will reiterate that. But that doesn't mean it doesn't offer anything, right? There's still some value to having Enlist in there with the kochia. We do typically see a little bit of a flash of increased activity with the Enlist when it's added to the Liberty, but normally it goes away pretty quickly. However, this year, we ended up getting several rain showers shortly after the treatments were made in this study. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that looking a little bit after application here, we can pick up a little bit of residual control of the kochia with the Enlist. So from a post-emergent standpoint, I'll still say that the Enlist isn't adding a lot, but you do have that little bit of residual that 2,4-D can provide. And again, not a great kochia product even in pre-emerge, but again, if you're adding it with Enlist, maybe getting a little bit of help throughout the course of the season. A couple of things that I was looking at to note here. One of the things we wanted to figure out is some of the adjuvant systems with both Liberty 280 and Liberty Ultra on here. Certainly this year adding that MSO to the Enlist 1 appears, at least in the short term, to be helping out a little bit. Or using something like a S-metolachlor here, providing a similar benefit. But at least this year, when we added both the MSO and the S-metolachlor, we weren't seeing any benefits. And in fact, for whatever reason, we saw a little bit worse activity, at least to start out with. And I should point out that this first column here is using this system without any pre-emerge herbicide. And this other column here is the same set of treatments, but with a pre-emerge of sulfentrazone and S-metolachlor. So almost all the treatments worked very well when we had our pre-emerge application first, at least shortly after application within those first few weeks. But without the pre-emerge, then we saw a lot more differentiation of the treatments. So I guess that makes sense. You start out with fewer plants to control. Most of your products are going to work a little bit better. And then the last two columns here, again, are just the plants that emerged after our application. So trying to get a measure of what the different products are bringing, again, for your whole season herbicide program. And certainly that addition of the dual helped quite a bit in our season-long weed management plan, especially when we didn't start out with a pre-emerge herbicide. Okay, this study here, I just wanted to point out one thing in particular. This is another study where we're looking at different tape mix combinations. A couple of things that really stood out. Again, when we have our Enlist 1 alone, very poor kochia control right off the bat, and throughout the season, it'll eventually go to 0. But again, you do see a little bit of initial injury. So one of the things that really stuck out with this study is we have 1 pass versus 2 pass on our post treatments. So anything that has an FB here is a sequential application. So Liberty followed by Liberty, Liberty Enlist followed by Liberty, and so on. So we have several treatments in there where we have followed by treatments. And when we do 2 passes this year, getting excellent control of our kochia. But almost every single instance where we only have 1 pass that it included a Liberty application, very poor end of season weed control. And I will say that for whatever reason, this year had the largest instance of plant survival compared to any other year when I've been working with Liberty. These applications were made when the plants are 3 to 4 inches, so a little bit taller than you want to be applying Liberty. But even so, have oftentimes had really good luck with those applications onto kochia. This year, just a lot of survival, and I attribute that a lot to the growing conditions that we had this year. But we saw a lot of this. You burn off the top completely, but you're missing some of those bottom growing points. Some of us were suspecting that maybe with the slow season we had this year to start with, there were probably a lot more growing points is one of the potential issues we had. But for whatever reason, a lot more escapes than normal. And this is with a single pass. But even those plants, when we look again, 1 versus 2 passes, 1 pass, we had a lot of escapes. The second pass here, essentially 100% control for the rest of the season with most of our sequential applications. So very happy with the 2 pass systems almost anywhere we use them this year. A lot of failures in our 1 pass system for post-emerge. So some of the takeaways I have from these trials was that our sulfentrazone products are providing essentially a control rating of none to poor in our weed control guide, if you look at our scale in the back. And so, and of course, that's only when the group 14 resistance is present. So sulfentrazone has been far and away, I think, one of the very best products for kochia in our toolbox. If our best tool now goes to a rating of N or P, that's a very substantial thing that puts it right on par with something like Sonalan or a number of other products as far as what the effectiveness that we might be expecting on these kochia populations. I've always felt that a third or a half a pound of metribuzin is where we should be at with kochia. But even so, the quarter pound was still adding substantially to our when we're combining it with our sulfentrazone. So if you're really serious about kochia management, that third or half a pound is where we really need to be. But even the quarter pound is adding a lot of value. Enlist 1, it does add a little bit of injury to our kochia. It's usually short-lived, but there perhaps could be some advantages in the residual area. And definitely if you have other weeds like water hemp and some others, that 2,4-D is going to have a lot more value there. And then I certainly believe now that we've moved to kind of a standard operation of having kochia being a 3-pass system in soybeans. And we need to really start thinking more about this philosophy of layered residuals which many of our counterparts in other states have been doing for quite some time already, and we've kind of been avoiding that bullet. But I think we're kind of to that point, not only with kochia, but our water hemp, where this really, we might not have any other options. Okay, moving on to just a couple slides here on this other subject I have. We've looked for a couple years now at what it might look like to use kind of your herbicide and a cover crop in dry beans, largely for wind erosion suppression, but also potentially some weed control benefits in there too. So here's some visuals from what some of this has looked like, planting the spring cover crops, and then going in and planting the dry beans. Essentially, this amounted to several types of trials. One of them was looking at cover crop species and looking at which herbicides, pre-emerge herbicides, might play best with these different cover crop species. We kind of narrowed it down that we looked at oats, spring planted winter rye, or barley. And barley seemed to play the best in our system. We had all of the products cause some level of cover crop injury, but certainly I think acceptable levels in most of these cases. And so for the subsequent studies we did after this, we chose to use barley as our focus, with the Spartan Elite as the pre-emerge product of choice. And just to give you an idea, so we looked at planting the barley at different seeding rates, between a half a bushel and 2 bushels per acre, planting it 3 weeks before planting versus planting it the same day as planting, and then terminating the barley at either 2 or 4 leaf stage. One thing I can say is that when you're working in that type of a system, the risk to the dry beans is pretty low. So this slide here is just demonstrating we actually didn't see any treatment differences in the dry bean yield, regardless of our strategy here. But one of the big issues here is that in order for this system to work successfully, the window is really, really small. I like the idea of having this cover crop in there, but either at the end of the year is terminated before the barley has enough lignin in it, and so at the end of the season it's essentially non-existent. Such as on the left-hand side, or on the right-hand side, the plants were difficult to control because they got a little bit too big, and our grass herbicides aren't effective once the barley gets to the boot stage, for instance. And so if you ever have any escapes, very difficult to control. And also, I think probably not doing what we'd like it to do. And so by comparison, when you look at winter rye and soybeans, or winter rye and dry beans, I think it's a lot more predictable, a lot easier to work with. The spring cover crops and dry beans could work for some people, but it's going to be a lot more, you'd have to keep an eye on it a lot closer in order to get it to accomplish what you want it to accomplish. And one of the last things I wanted to mention is I'm not going to talk about harvest weed seed control today, except to mention that we do have a commercial unit mounted on one of our harvesters that we use for seed increase. We've done a few trials on it over the years, and are fairly, we have some good experiences with it, using it in a seed production operation. So if you want to visit about it, we have the unit. You can come out and take a look at it. We'll tell you the positives and the negatives about it, because there's some of both for sure. And see if you ever want to take a look, see if it fits into your operation. I'd be happy to have more of those one-on-one conversations and see what you guys think. I also did want to mention that we do have a spray drone now at the Carrington Research Extension Center, and we do plan to initiate a number of spray drone trials over this coming year, likely involving things like late season corn applications and maybe some desiccation options for some of the crops specific to North Dakota. And with that, I will take any questions you might have.